NESAWG, the Northeast Sustainable Agriculture Working Group, was founded in 1992, and NESAWG is a BIPOC-led nonprofit organization headquartered in Narragansett Territory, now known as the state of Rhode Island. We're a network of over 500 organizations covering 12 states and Washington, D.C., and we're focused on sustainable agriculture and helping build a farm and food system that is just and equitable for all. This year, we've brought a delegation of farmers, growers, community organizers, advocates, policy strategists, and food practitioners from over 20 Northeast organizations to the meeting. Now I'll introduce Cristina Cabrera, our Executive Director, to give a land acknowledgement.
Hello. Hello to all of our relatives in our 4 directions. I'm going to read the tribal and land acknowledgement issued by Narragansett tribal official representatives and tribal elders from what is now known as the state of Rhode Island, as NESAWG is headquartered in Providence, Rhode Island. As a way of introduction, we are here. We are the people who grew from this land. We are the First Nations. We're sovereign tribal nations. We're the people who have inhabited this land from time immemorial. Our ancestors are buried here. We want to take a moment to honor our ancestors who faithfully stewarded our inherent territories, and we want to express our deep gratitude to Mother Earth, who has sustained us throughout all these generations. We are the inherent keepers and protectors of the land of our ancestors from time immemorial for the survival of the next 7 generations. We also want to acknowledge all those who do not have their ancestors buried under this very soil since time immemorial. You are standing on stolen land. You are here living and working on this land as guests. As guests, we respectfully request that you make the commitment or the recommitment to honor Mother Earth, to stop the trampling of the land, to follow the leadership and stewardship of her First Nations, and to respect and uphold Indigenous sovereignty without violation. We also want to acknowledge the tribal groups and communities in what is now known as the state of New Hampshire. There isn't a federally acknowledged or recognized tribe, federally or state, in the state of New Hampshire. Hopefully that will change, but we want to acknowledge mostly Abenaki, Penobscot, and many other groups on this territory. And with that, we are going to let Ella present our panelists. We're going to have some stories from our farmers on the ground, Black, Indigenous, immigrant, migrant community farmers, and we hope you enjoy, and we'll have some questions, Q&A, hopefully at the end.
Introducing our panelists, we have Rob Peck, the farmer and owner of Hemp, Milk, and Honey Farm in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Ulum Pixan, the co-founder and co-director of Global Village Farms in Grafton, Massachusetts. And Robert Chang, the Policy Coordinator at NEFOC, Northeast Farmers of Color Land Trust, and a farmer at Echo Farm in Woodstock, Connecticut.
So, does this work? Hello? Yes? Okay. So I'll be moderating the panel, but also be part of the panelists. Also want to acknowledge that Anthony Munene, farmer from Boris, immigrant and refugee organization, was scheduled to be a panelist, but he had to rush to the doctor this morning, so please keep your prayers for Anthony. And so I don't want to take much time, but I've been growing, and I'm a producer in the urban areas, mostly community gardens, farmlands, and this is what the difficulty of accessing land, this is what we see. This is mills with a lot of pollution and toxic chemicals, very difficult to build the soil. Today, we have this community garden. This is one of them, there's more. But the toxics remain, and so when we do any construction, we're here rebuilding our raised garden beds. Everything has to be raised, nothing can touch the soil. We have to buy tarps. There's platforms underneath, tarps for the soil and the compost. Nothing can really touch the soil. These are the beds that we are building of cedar, following the tradition of Aboriginal communities. But we normally, we would be able to build them from super adobe, from the same soil underneath our feet. We can't do that because it's contaminated and it will go into our food. So what would cost $2,000 if we did them with super adobe, I have a background in architecture as well, this costs $20,000. It's the onus on our communities is huge, the weight. And then this is another community garden where we worked lots of years, 10 years to remediate, very nearby, 4 or 5 blocks away from that industrial site, try to remediate the soil where you see the arrows to the left, and then they install a new field, which you can't see there, but there is a new field there with very toxic chemicals, rubber, recycled chemicals. They're light pellets, they flow into the garden, and now we can't grow anymore. And we had to stop all growing, and the only thing that we can grow are flowers until we work with the city to remove that toxic fields which are banned in Europe. So this is some of the issues that we see in urban gardening and the difficulty of accessing clean land and healthy soils for food, healthy food security. And I'm going to pass this along to Robert Peck. He can also share a little bit about land access, and it's a common theme. So Robert.
Yeah, so again, my name is Robert Peck, and along with owning a farm business, I manage a youth program at an urban agriculture nonprofit, and even through that nonprofit, land access has been tough because we lease the land from the city, and last year we actually had to get a lot of community support for us to really get a new lease established. The land that we operate on was previously a vacant lot, like an old strip mall that's just been, kind of just sitting there for a while. The city council, I guess, made some deals where they were trying to put something on that property. So, we really had to get a lot of community support to make sure that we were able to stay on that lease, to stay on that property. And even with the new lease that we have there, it's, there's some contingencies. So if a library, is looking to get established, that, there's a kick-out clause. So it's been tough. It's really been tough. And then even with my own business, I kind of started not looking for land per se, but I was more so looking to do natural garden services for people. Just through different events and mixers and situations, I stumbled across the opportunity to acquire some land. This first property is up in Wilton, which is about 25 minutes from where I live. I also came across another opportunity with a family friend who has some property in Trumbull, which is about 10-15 minutes from where I live. So still, I'm finding places to grow out of, but in terms of accessibility and being able to maintain things, the place in Wilton that could be a great place for livestock, but that's not something I feel comfortable doing, not living there. So these are the things that I have to think about. I also have to put up deer fencing for both locations. Heavy deer pressure is gonna wipe out most of my crops. So just thinking about how I can look at these spaces and how I can use these spaces, and even trying to figure out like how to find the funding for all of these things. I have a couple of jobs, and it's still tough figuring out like, all right, how am I going to get a fence here? There's no irrigation here. How do I, pump this water from 300 yards to get it over here just to start irrigating? And it's really been tough. I know there's different grants and loan fundings opportunities, but a good deal of them are for, when you're in your second year or your third year and you already have that history of selling. The first year for me has been a little tough. Finding funding, I've found some little mini grants here and there, but there's also a couple of groups that I'm starting to see that are providing some resources and really looking to provide support for farmers to properly get them into place so that when they're signing up for a loan, they're not signing up for something that's just going to keep adding debt to them later on.
Thank you so much for sharing, Rob. And we also have Pixan with Global Village Farms. That was 10 years finding land with a whole community, entire community. But Ulum, I don't know if you have some words to share about that. And then once you access the land, how does the community manage it? And there's lots of stories that, rich knowledge there.
Thank you, Cristina. Hi, everyone. My name is Pixan, and I actually migrated from Guatemala in late '99, and I started my journey in the U.S. In 2000 due to a very fascist government in Guatemala. And I started, like any other immigrant, trying to find a good job I traveled with my 2 kids and my ex-husband. And, really one of the things that if people don't know, Guatemala is well known for growing crops. It's a very rich soil we have growing all year long. And coming to the U.S., I experienced a lot of food insecurity. The change in life really affected my kids. I have actually one son, 17-year-old, that has a lot of mental health issues due to contamination in the soil, and also now has diabetes and a failing liver. So this issue is very important for me. And the only way I could actually figure out how to give good nutrition to my kids was to grow my own food. And so in early 2005, I started volunteering at a nonprofit. They give education for immigrants, how to access English, because that was a big barrier for me and my peers. And through that, I started to see like the wanted of growing food. And as Cristina said, I grow food in community gardens. Because before I was growing in my backyard and didn't know what it was there. It's not common knowledge that there's a lot of lead contamination in cities for the paint, especially in immigrant communities. Like, we don't know what is in the soil, especially if you come from a place where the soil is not as contaminated. And then we began the journey of finding land. Obviously, I wasn't able to find land in Rhode Island, which the price per acre is 3 times more than the price in Massachusetts, and I think it's like 25 times more than the price in New Hampshire. And we started the journey of looking for land, and during those 10 years I learned, I went to many trainings of how to grow in the US. And as you see, I started my farm with my family. This is in 2016, we bought the land. We have 52 acres in Grafton, Massachusetts, and we started at the same time a nonprofit so we could educate people in their cultural practices, be able to grow cultural food. And also we have, the farmers is a cooperative, so we have right now 4 women farmers, and we don't have pictures of them because they're undocumented, and you know, they're, yeah, it's safer for them not to be shown. And it's sad for me because they're the ones that do most of the work, I do most of the education. And this is my youngest son, and he's happy growing with us, and I hope, you know, that he is my hope. I have 3 kids growing with me. You saw my daughter. I have a 20-year-old that comes when he's off from college and works in the farm part-time during the summer. And now his girlfriend is working at the farm. So we have volunteers on Sundays, but it took us 10 years to put the money together for the farm. It's inaccessible. My partner took 7 loans with her aunts and family, and yeah, taxes are crazy. The town haven't wanted to give us nonprofit status for, like, give us the farm as nonprofit, so we pay taxes like anyone else. And depending on the town, you get the luck that the town wants to do it or not. So, you know, cultural crops is also a hard thing to find seeds that are actually non-GMO to grow. Like corn is one of the seeds that's most contaminated with GMO. And it's hard to grow your cultural food, and that's #1 reason for obesity and immigrant communities, the change of diet. So.
And you have democratically
So
controlled.
a cooperative is a democratic, so the workers are the owners of the business, so we don't have like a horizontal structure. We have a horizontal structure, we don't have this vertical like the boss and the workers, so we all own, we share profits, and we also share the gains. Our CSA is also a democratically controlled way to the community to own. And like I say, every Sunday we have people coming to volunteer, either the people that get the vegetables or people in the communities that don't have access to learn how to grow food. So I have a lot of volunteers from Boston, Rhode Island, from Providence and Worcester, and even some folks from Springfield, because it's not a lot of food in Springfield like we talked before.
Well, thank you, Ulum, so much. We have Robert Chang here, and he is also a farmer growing organic produce and cut flowers, and also part of NEFOC. Robert, would you like to share your story, and also very rich and wonderful. So.
Thank you, Christina. Good morning, everyone. My name is Robert Chang. I am a certified organic vegetable cut flower farmer. I have a tiny farm in Woodstock, Connecticut, 14 acres. This is part of Connecticut that we call the Quiet Corner, also part of the last Green Valley, Connecticut, in Massachusetts. When I moved to Woodstock, I realized it's a very different, when I moved my farm to Woodstock, I realized it's a very different place from where I was farming before. Woodstock is a town of about 7,000 people. It's very rural. We have quite a few dairy farms still in existence, along with some other orchards and maple operations and vegetable growers in addition to me. I am, as you can imagine, the only farmer that looks like me in town. And there are probably, out of that town of 7,000 people, maybe 20-something folks that look like me in town. So when I moved to Woodstock and moved my operation there, I realized selling directly to consumers and to my neighbors is going to be very different from me than it was before. So I was going to have to change my business plan, change the types of crops that I grow, change the types of marketing that I would, and outreach that I would do to my neighbors because I live in a community like Woodstock. It's very socially isolating. Although I will say I'm grateful to my neighbors in Woodstock who have been supportive and generally welcoming. But it is incredibly socially isolating for me to be the only one there. NEFOC, the Northeast Farmers of Color Land Trust, was started back in 2018 by a group of 20 farmers of color who were like me, who were feeling very socially isolated in the communities that they were farming. And they came together really for survival and for mutual support, to do skill sharing and knowledge sharing, and just to support one another. And they realized that they also shared a lot of common values as growers. So we were very much interested in food sovereignty, in land sovereignty, in respecting our ancestral values for ceremony and human habitat, and for restoring native ecosystems, for cultural preservation, and also for sustainable farming. And so out of that first group of 20 people was started the NEFOC Land Trust and the NEFOC Network of Farmers, which today numbers over 620 farmers in the Northeast, from Maine to Maryland and Pennsylvania. The average age of the farmers in our network is 35 years old. 75% of the farmers in our network have experience and knowledge with farming. So a lot of us are new beginning farmers, some of us are aspiring farmers, but 75% of us are ready and already working on farms. This morning in our first presentation, we heard about the challenges facing New England if we're going to have 30% of our produce by 2030. And I want to say that NEFOC and the farmers that we represent, we are here and we are ready to help you guys meet that challenge. And that the region is not going to be able to meet that challenge without our active participation and cooperation. And so the other thing that NEFOC stands for is for engaging us and our community, not only of farmers, but also our community of consumers, by investing in a for-us, by-us approach. And what that means is when we ask for financial support and resources and assistance, if you want to really engage our community to solve some of these problems, those resources, the prioritization of those resources have to be channeled through organizations that are BIPOC-led, BIPOC-centered, and locally focused. And those organizations do exist. So beyond us as a regional organization, there are lots of other small community organizations in different communities where there are BIPOC farmers, where there is community engagement with agriculture and with food production. And so we ask you all to seek out those organizations when you are looking for groups to work with and to fund. We're out here and you can find us. I also want to say that in terms of all of these solutions to the problems that and the challenges that we're facing in agriculture, engaging BIPOC farmers and the consumers that we have a connection to really is central, and we have to be part of the decision-making process. We are not going to solve these challenges in agriculture if you continue to exclude a large segment of the population from offering their energy, creativity, and solutions to the situation. So, so again, I invite you all to engage with us as a community, to folks like Rob and Ulum, who can really offer quite a bit of innovation and creativity to some of the problems that we face. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. So we've talked about community gardening, urban gardening, we talked about land access, we talked about democratically controlled and horizontal structures led by communities of color, and we've talked about racial equity with everything that Robert has just shared. This is all very important. Our NESAWG network with so many members and so many other networks within the network, we meet on a monthly basis to work specifically at state levels and bring some of our stories to NEASDA and NASDA. And if you go to our website, you will be able, after this conference, we'll upload a report. And in the last few slides, you'll see a contact there. So we encourage you to visit the website. I did want to, we're going to go now into the actions. And we raised some issues and some priorities. I want to go into the actions, but before doing that, I wanted to lift the fact that during these monthly meetings, we've seen the need to also lift the priorities for the Farm Bill. This is 2023 important Farm Bill year. And while we didn't, it's a very long document, 14, 15 pages, we didn't include it in your folders that you all received. Our website will have the recommendations and the priorities around the Farm Bill as well. And lastly, wanted to call to awareness that based on the McKinsey report from November 10, 2021, 10 years ago, there were 100 years ago, there were 14% farmers that were identifying as Black or mixed race. Today, 2021, 100 years later, it's 1.4% of farmers. And the way this is identified per USDA definition, it's farm operators. Farm operators means not just, it could be owner, but it could be farm manager. So 1.4% in the entire country. This is farmers of color. This needs to, and it has been declining in the last 100 years. It used to be 14%, which was really small, and now it's 1.4. So lifting that up, we'll go into actions. We want to acknowledge our colleague, Anthony Munene from Oris, who unfortunately, he has wonderful stories to share, but unfortunately for health reasons, he is not joining us today. So we'll go to actions. And, well, I thought I was going to be able to read from here, but probably I'll pull it up. There were some actions that, briefly, that I wanted to lift from the urban community growing side. There is the importance of definitely funding to clean up brownfields. The solution, the contamination, the pollution, arsenic, all kinds of metals. We're testing with universities. It's really not. There is no food safety, no food security, and urban communities need to be able to access their plot of land within a half-mile distance, because many of them don't have cars, and so they need to be able to walk. And unfortunately, the areas where our people are located, it's in areas that the soil is not healthy. So we encourage developing a relationship with BIPOC farmers, especially with the Aboriginal tribes of your local region. Contact them, know them, talk to them, and just listen to their priorities and their land practices, how to embrace and be in right alignment with Mother Earth. We encourage conducting assessments of all brownfields in the state and funding the cleanup of those brownfields and turning them into agricultural land. And committing also to land rematriation, providing access to long-term land tenure to socially and economically disadvantaged growers and farmers, prioritizing BIPOC producers who are organized in democratically controlled groups, and committing to the development of organic community gardens within the half-mile distance, walking distance that we mentioned, and providing free access to water. It's very hard to farm and grow food in urban areas without access to water. And getting all those barrels and tanks and pickup trucks to be able to water the produce and the plants, it's very difficult and very costly and very time-consuming. And we know that USDA has some programs and RCS specifically, but we need so much more. And develop a fund to be able to access tools, for those tools to be shared and the equipment to be shared. Develop programs for urban farmers, for all farmers, but specifically in urban areas. This is very lacking. And commit to developing the creation of pollinator pathways in urban areas. So important are pollinators for native plants to succeed, and free access to food safety training and organic growing practices. So I'm going to pass it on to Rob. I've talked enough.
Sweet. So for land access, credit loans, and grant access, some of my action steps are to provide support to land trust projects, focusing on acquiring land specifically for urban agriculture. So that could be those, those brownfields that are, you just can't use, that you can go ahead and turn into an above ground system. Develop a streamlined process in which municipalities can lease land to urban farmers and organizations in locations dealing with food apartheid. So, directly addressing that lease issue that the nonprofit had. I think there's a number of ways that different municipalities can access the lands that just aren't even being touched. Develop a process in which a land easement can be assigned to vacant lots in urban settings for the purpose of urban agriculture. Again, I think having those easements will kind of deter a lot of the the development that's going on, especially in these urban settings where a lot of people that have been living there for quite some time are no longer able to live there because of the new housing that's being put up. It's just not affordable, and with easements like this, that'll deter developers from going to a location and looking at it in that way. Provide educational resources in various ways that new and beginner farmers can access land. Just continuing to push some of that so that newer farmers know how they can start to plug in once they get accustomed to growing and very familiar with that. Grant and loan opportunities for new and beginner farmers in the earlier stages of farm development. So support for business planning and even just planning before establishing themselves on a specific land or a farm. Support new and beginner farmers on financial advice for grants, loans, and business planning resources. This was my first time starting a business, so a lot of this was starting from scratch, and I'm just doing all the research that I can on my own. So without some of those things in place, a lot of people can be really lost, and I'll pass it over to Ulum.
Thank you. Yes, Ulum.
So my action for democratic control farming, so that's co-ops and CSA farming. We urge the increased access for cooperative, collective, and community-led, member-owned-led organizations to participate in future meetings, conferences, and closed-door meetings. Ensure that the cooperative movement producers have equitable access to agricultural programs, including same thing, capital, farm credit and loans, crop insurance, land tenure opportunities, education, training, and mentorship, and technical assistance programs. So a lot of these programs are for one person, not geared to the individual, not the collective. Again, invest in this for us, by us approach, where resources are prioritized for the community, not for one person. And like, for example, like FSA loans are forbidden to be given to cooperatives. It's just given to personal. So, you know, it's kind of like prohibitive to people to do it in community. Collectivized farmers to be able to be included in the 2501 program. Programs that improve access to credit and capital for community and collectively owned farms. Programs that are directly address the land access tenure for opportunities for, again, collectives, cooperatives, or collectively owned farms. And create the collective commons. Like Massachusetts is a commonwealth, but actually doesn't act like one. So we have like a lot of our cultural practices, our indigenous practices, and we want those practices to be part and recognized to be part of the climate smart agriculture, because we know that we were as people able to mitigate for centuries climate change, and since colonization in the United States, that have accelerated 1 million per one. Before colonization, in this territory, it was the same amount of people there is now, but the climate implications were so minor, and so we know the solutions to these problems. So we want to be part of the climate smart agriculture, so we can increase climate resilience and also community resilience to protect the ecosystems.
Thank you, Robert. Here's some actions for racial equity.
Yes, so first of all, I want to thank NESAWG and the coalition for inviting NEFOC and allowing us to participate in this meeting. So, and also thank you to NEASDA for allowing us to be here. I'd like to first and foremost ask if NEASDA could continue to make this conference accessible to groups like ours in the future. That would be great. Second, I'm obviously going to ask for more money and more resources. I want to disclose, I used to be a state worker for the University of Connecticut for a few years up until this past March, so I get it. There is not a lot of money that anybody can, pull out of the stone for all kinds of funding programs. And I'm fully aware, we're talking about the Farm Bill. This is also a year of divided federal government. And so again, not a lot of federal funding forthcoming. At the same time, I want you guys to understand that it is really hard for people in my community to be told to just be more patient. We really are tired of having to eat our own bitterness. So forgive me, I'm going to continue to advocate and push for more, even under current circumstances. My colleagues here have done a wonderful job of talking about access, financing, and resources for land access and other things, so I'm not going to reiterate that. I would like to highlight one thing. The 2501 program from USDA got a substantial boost in funding this past year. I get it, it's probably not realistic to expect that that level of funding will continue, But that funding is important to us in our community. Those programs are really important. We really would like you guys to fight to hold on to as much of that as possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we understand that you work at state level, but NEASDA as an organization has issued a platform for the Farm Bill 2023. So these are issues that can be lobbied and brought to Washington, D.C. and Congress people. We have 5 minutes or 4 minutes for Q&A, if that's okay. Any questions that might arise? Back there, yes.
It's not a question so much as a comment of having seen all of these presentations this morning and just really appreciate, Robert, what you said about this isn't going to happen. And we often think of this northern New England being growers, southern New England being consumers, and the fact that urban ag is so important to all of this, and just want to appreciate you being here and recognizing that there's a lot of production that's underutilized, the potential is underutilized and under-resourced in other areas of New England. And so thank you for being here, and thank you for reminding us that we can grow in all parts of our region as part of getting to 30 by 2030. So thank you for that timely reminder.
Thank you, and I want to reiterate, yes, deep appreciation for all the presentations for this panel and for all of the presentations this morning, and for the New Hampshire Commissioner's Office, including us all on the agenda. These are the organizations represented in this group coming to NEASDA 2023 and the funders. Deeply appreciated. We wouldn't be here without the funders. Please visit our website. It's NESAWG.org, but if you want to reach us, feel free to email us at info@nesawg.org. Questions can be ongoing, and we can establish a dialogue. And as you heard, NESAWG is 12 states, plus Northeast states plus Washington, D.C. And within those states, vast networks of people of color as well. So please reach out. Any other questions? Yes?
Just to echo perhaps what Holly said, that especially in a state like Rhode Island with a lot of urban land, that we're interested in finding a way to help out. And we recognize that you come to the table offering to help us meet the goal that we think is important, 30 by 30. And we all have to support all farmers in the state and the region to accomplish that goal. So I think you'll find, speaking from my colleagues, that they take an interest in working through these issues and finding a way to equitably support all the farmers in the region. So we appreciate you being here. We appreciate your voices, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you. You can reach us during lunchtime, and you can speak to us individually as well. And thank you all.
Well, thank you for the presentation, and you folks reached out to us, and that was important, and obviously you're here. And I think when you think about, particularly, I know the New Hampshire Department of Agriculture, which is a very small organization, and I get people saying all the time to me, will reach out. I'm like, I don't have the time to be thinking about who to reach out. So it's very important for all of us to be our own advocates and to reach out to us when you have an ask, because I'm sure many of the other departments of agriculture are in the same situation that we're in New Hampshire. We just don't have that staff. And so there are people all the time, all over the place, who I think believe that I'm ignoring them but the reality is there just isn't the bandwidth. So when you have an ask, please reach out. We're glad to work with you. We're glad to partner with you. Don't feel that you're forgotten. Just realize that you know, we're running that rat race, and sometimes there isn't any breathing room in the day. So thank you for being here. Thank you all. Again, we're having lunch up in the Sun Dining Room where we had breakfast, and we will be loading onto the buses promptly at 1.